Hey guys, Josh here, and today again we're going to be talking about pain and suffering, the patterns of pain and suffering, and sacrifice as well. Now, the enemies that you painfully defeat drop runes that contain a metaphysical or physical power that you gain when you consume the rune in Elden Ring. Now, the makers of this game, Elden Ring, are absolutely brilliant because this is a real metaphysical pattern of pain, of suffering, and sacrifice, and the purpose behind it.
Jim is my enemy, but it turns out that Jim is also his own worst enemy. And the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So Jim is actually my friend. But because he is his own worst enemy, the enemy of my friend is my enemy. So actually Jim is my enemy. But
And that symbolic or metaphysical pattern is also present in the answers to the following questions. Why did Zeus gain wisdom by viciously consuming Metis, the goddess of wisdom? Why did heroes in Norse mythology consume certain parts of slain monsters to gain some form of power or wisdom? Why did Aztec warriors believe that they would gain strength and internalize the warrior spirit of their fallen foes by ritualistically consuming their enemies? And why do Christians believe that consuming the body and blood of Christ in the bread and wine of the Eucharist grants them spiritual strength and union with the divine, amongst other things? We're going to look into the pattern hidden here today, the pattern of pain and suffering and sacrifice into good and glory. Why does this matter? When we think of the rewards behind overcoming pain and suffering, we typically think of patterns like suffering through a difficult workout at the gym or running or something along those lines, which yields the gold of a stronger, healthier, and more beautiful body. But what about the arbitrary, seemingly pointless, meaningless pain and suffering that life throws at you sometimes? Right? You get sideswiped by a car and become an invalid for months, or you get sick and are unable to fully recover for years, or you injure your back and you live in constant pain for months or even years. When you're able to identify purpose and meaning in even those forms of suffering, it's like gaining a superpower. I mean, quite literally, I would say. Um, and it's a superpower that I currently have and I hope lasts long term, right? Because, and I'll go into more details on this at some point about my injury, but yeah, I've been going through this pattern of pain and suffering for some time now, thanks to an accident and an injury to my back. And again, I'll go into more details on that in the future, but I've discovered this pattern of pain and suffering and the purpose behind even seemingly meaningless and pointless and random pain and suffering. And we're going to go into a lot more depth into that in this series. This video will go into that a little bit as well, but especially in the videos to come. Like I was saying, it becomes something like a superpower because now suffering joins you to a higher good, to a greater purpose with a powerful outcome and reward. So, this is the gist of it. Life is crawling with monsters and dragons and beasts of various forms, both physically, psychologically, archetypally, and metaphysically. Fighting a monster in your life virtually always means suffering and pain, but the victory you earn is more than worth it. Behind the dragon lays the gold. And the pattern here is the pattern of pain and suffering into glory and good. Something like this, right? You could call it a number of different things, and there are multiple subcategories as well. But yeah, pain and suffering is required to defeat the dragon, and the reward is not just gold, but often the golden essence, you could say, of the dragon itself, or the essence the dragon is guarding alongside the gold. Now, in Elden Ring, to return to the video game for a moment, when you kill an enemy, you get the enemy's runes that they drop. You gain a metaphysical and physical power when you defeat your enemies. Now, this is brilliant because it reveals a real metaphysical pattern. Again, every great enemy we fell in this life, through great pain and suffering, typically, always when we're talking about great enemies. It yields some form of metaphysical or physical power, or both. To become stronger in Elden Ring, you gather runes, which are similar to the souls in previous Souls games. And the idea is you kill an enemy and you get these runes, which you can transmute, so to speak, into physical, like strength, dex, or metaphysical strength, right? Intelligence, faith, mind, etc., by consuming them. Now, these runes are seeds of a sort, which is beautiful, the symbolism there. When you die and you drop these runes, they sprout into little golden trees. And the symbol of the seed is identity, essence, name, right? And everything that comes with that, right? Beliefs surrounding it, the principles, the character. And that's of the enemy that dropped it, that it was guarding, in a sense, right? These runes. This echoes the age old belief that you gain your enemy's powers by defeating it in battle or consuming it. Right. In shamanistic cultures and many Native American tribes, consuming specific animals or enemies was believed to transfer spiritual or physical power. Now, here's another example of myth communicating this pattern. In Norse mythology, consuming parts of a being, like the heart, for example, could grant knowledge, strength, or other abilities. For example, Sigurd of the Volsunga saga gains wisdom and various supernatural powers. I think the ability to speak the language of the birds, to understand the birds, for example. He gains various supernatural powers after consuming the heart of the dragon Fafnir. Now, keep in mind, this is a metaphysical pattern that's being communicated, right? We're not literally going out and slaying enemies and eating their hearts. Hopefully. The obvious truth here is apparent. Whether the enemy is a general and his army, a bear you're hunting, a dragon in need of slaying, or the obstacles between you and your career or business goals, or some random accident that turned you into an invalid for months, or the pain and suffering, that random, seemingly pointless pain and suffering that life throws at you. Defeating this enemy gives you access to wisdom, knowledge, understanding, or some other power that you would not have otherwise if you deal with it correctly, nobly, and sometimes when you don't. But gaining these runes always requires sacrifice, and usually requires pain and suffering. And the greater the enemy that is defeated, the more suffering it can inflict, but also the greater the reward it is. The bigger the dragon, the bigger the pain, but also the reward, the gold, the essence, the strength of character, the wisdom and power of various forms. Now let's talk about naming the pain. One of the key things to remember is to name the monster, the pain, identify its role, its purpose, and the gold it's guarding. So what do I mean by that? Imagine for a moment that in Elden Ring or whatever video games you play, there's a monstrous creature, a dragon that you have to defeat. You know, by discussing this with other gamers, that this monster does not yield any reward whatsoever. And it's seemingly pointless. Like, you kill this dragon and nothing happens. But this is one of those incredibly difficult boss-like monsters that, you're going to die like 50 times to before you actually defeat it. Are you going to fight that monster, or are you going to avoid it if you can? You're probably going to avoid it, right? We fight the monsters that we know are guarding some form of reward, because otherwise, what's the point? The name, the identity of, the purpose of the monsters in your life are to keep you from your purpose as a husband, perhaps, as a father, or as a mother or wife. Whatever it is, the next time you feel fear, ask yourself, what monster am I facing? What is the name, the identity, the character, the purpose of this monster and this pain that it is inflicting, this pain that I will use like a currency to buy my victory? When I defeat this monster, what will I gain? And what will I become as a result? How will that serve me in my role as a father, as a husband, as a woman, as a man, as a wife, as a mother, whatever you are? So let's say you're a salesperson or a business owner who takes on that role, and you're giving a presentation to a potential customer or client. The pain, the monster you're facing may be fear of failure, for example. And that monster is standing between you and the sacred space, so to speak, right? In the same way that we see in so many different stories and mythological stories and legends of the cherubim guarding the sacred space of the Ark of the Covenant, or the Garden of Eden, or the Sphinx guarding the sacred city of Thebes. Right? If you She asks the riddle. If you answer it incorrectly, she devours you. If you answer it correctly, now she's on your side. You're allowed in. So this fear of failure is standing between you and this sacred space, which is the state of being and responsibility called provider. Right? In the Bible, this state of being is a part of the kingdom of heaven, right? The kingdom of heaven is righteousness, joy, and peace. And the Holy Spirit, righteousness is doing right in the eyes of God, is alignment with the highest, right? And this responsibility of being the provider, that is when you are aligned with that responsibility properly, with that archetypal logos, you could say, you are in the kingdom of heaven, in this pattern of the kingdom of heaven, right? Whether however high that of a level that is, or low of a level, I'm not sure, but you have to defeat this monster to put food on the table for your family. Right? This is a noble thing that you're doing, and you're when you're doing this, you're identifying the purpose of that pain, of that monster that you are fighting, and the purpose of this specific situation, what's at stake, and this actually makes it much easier to face and far more fulfilling to overcome. So the pattern here is kind of a subcategory of the pattern of pain into good and glory, right? The purpose of pain ultimately is to enhance the good and to bring about the greater good. That is the purpose of pain and suffering in the world, metaphysically speaking and otherwise. This is embracing the pain of the battle to overcome the monster, to gain power or virtue of some form, and to do good ultimately, right? The pattern is the pattern of pain into power, you could say, into the pain into virtue, or pain into character, pain into wisdom, whatever it is. The outcome and reward will be different depending on the monster. So the lesson here is overcoming the enemies in your life gives you their essence, or the essence they're guarding, you could say. By defeating the monsters life throws at us and the various forms of pain and suffering they inflict, you're consuming a metaphysical or a physical power, right? It can be strategic or tactical knowledge that you gain, or wisdom, self belief indirectly, faith in yourself, faith in God, potentially. All of these things that allow you to level up, to become stronger, wiser, more capable, clever, competent. Revelation 2:7 says, "To the one who is victorious, I will give the right to eat from the tree of life, which is in the paradise of God." So there's a ton you can unpack there. There's a ton you could get out of that. But here Jesus is promising a reward to those who are victorious in the metaphysical battle against the enemy, the Satan or Satan, right? The accuser, the deceiver. You can reduce that to the psychological perspective, understand it through Jungian lenses. Or if you read Jung a bit differently, you can see the metaphysical side of it as well. Or you can view that from a Christian perspective, and this is a spiritual battle, and the reward is a spiritual reward. Now, here's a little bit more depth into the pattern present in Elden Ring. The runes you're able to equip to make yourself stronger, or in some cases weaker, either physically or metaphysically, are described in the game lore as principles, ideologies, beliefs. This also reflects true reality and even higher reality, as the beliefs and principles you learn and live life by will make you stronger or weaker, depending on the quality of the quote unquote rune. When, oh, what was her name? The waifu, whatever her name is. When she first discusses your runes with you, she says, Milena. Milena, when she first discusses your runes with you, she says, share them with me. Share them with me. Your thoughts, your ambitions, the principles you would follow. The rune is, in this way, a representation of the thoughts and beliefs that become words and actions, which become habits, which create a person's character, which determines his or her destiny. And that's our time for day. Excuse me. That's our time for this one. Lots more to cover here. Lots more territory to go into on in this pattern of pain and suffering, and to kind of point out how the purpose of pain and suffering in our lives is ultimately to enhance the good and to bring about the highest good. And it's very, very difficult to explain, but I see it, and that's the exciting thing. If I can encapsulate all of this in words properly, I think it's going to be incredibly helpful for a lot of you. It's certainly been helpful for me, and I think I've been able to do that. I just need to organize all my thoughts, put them into videos, and yeah, I think the next one is going to be a really good one. So stay tuned. Again, my name's Josh. This is the Unconventional Compass, and I will see you in the next one.